Welcome to Let's Talk, a call-in show on the Skeptic Haven channel. Let's Talk is a safe place for atheists, those questioning or leaving religion, and anyone that wants to ask questions and have respectful discussions. If you're in the U.S., call us at 984-789-4787. And from outside the U.S., call in from your computer using the URL on the screen. Let's get ready for Let's Talk. Let's go.
This is Skeptic Haven. Let's talk.
It looks like Darante's screen froze. Oh, there you go. There he's back.
I'm back. Okay. All right. But yeah, so I'm really looking forward to having this conversation and let's see here. And while we're kind of getting situated, I do want to remind you that Skeptic Haven is looking for volunteers to help behind the scenes. If you'd like to be a part of the team, send us an email at info@skeptichaven.com. Yes. And of course, tonight we have our special guest with us, Dr. Ray. And I think he has some pretty exciting news to share with us. Hey, we're back on.
Yeah, I don't know what happened, but just as soon as we started, I went dead. But we're back. We are back.
It's quite all right. I think I froze up a little bit too, so it must be something in the air.
Yeah.
But awesome. I was just telling the audience that we were talking behind stage before we jumped in about Dr. Deneen, and I like to kind of pick up on that conversation a little bit, which was kind of your idea, and I thought it was a great one. Will you kind of educate me a little bit about Dr. Deneen's role in the clergy project?
Well, yeah, Dr. Dennett's written, a number of books. He was a philosophy professor, I believe, at Tufts University. It was, if I recall. Anyway, a great thinker. They used to call him one of the four horsemen with, Sam Harris and Richard Dawkins and Hitchens.
Yep.
His book Breaking the Spell was groundbreaking. Really opened a lot of people's eyes, and I will say that book influenced me quite a bit too. It came out in like 2005 or 6. And really enjoyed what he had to say. And if you read my book, The God Virus, which is just up here a little way or somewhere, you'll see that influence. He and Dawkins both had influence on the writing of The God Virus. But
Wow.
part of what came out of that was he and a colleague of his, Linda Lascola, did this. They had this hunch, and it was kind of an interesting hunch, that there were ministers in the pulpit preaching every Sunday who didn't believe what they were preaching. And so they decided to test their hunch, and they used a methodology to get out there, and they found out, in fact, there were quite a few ministers preaching in the pulpit every Sunday. And that led them, Linda and Dan, to propose to Dr. Dawkins and to Dan Barker that maybe we should create this entity and call it the Clergy Project. Now, this was about almost 2 years after I started recovering from religion. People get us confused and think we're part of the same thing. We're not, but we work closely together, and we really support what they're trying to do or what they have done. Last I checked, they had over 1,500 clergy or former clergy in their database. Now, some of these people are still preaching. Some have left, and they've got some funding to help ministers. A small amount of funding. A philanthropist is giving them enough money so that they can give a little money for job retraining and stuff. Because when a minister leaves, they're SOL. They don't even have any retirement because churches don't pay into Social Security. Yeah.
I am a personal witness of this. Absolutely.
Yeah. You lose it all. And churches aren't, and even if you have a retirement, if you leave and become an atheist or an out
Mhm.
atheist, you lose your retirement from them too. I mean,
Yes.
it's really a
Yep.
scam. But anyway, Dr. Dennett was an amazing human being. I unfortunately never had the opportunity. I've got thousands of friends that met him, but I never got to meet him.
Wow.
We were at different conferences. He'd speak at a conference and I'd be there the next year. So we'd always miss each other. And it was just, that it was my loss. I really wish I could have. But he has had a huge influence on a large number of people, not just the people that read his books, but
Yeah.
the people who are now being repurposed or finding a new purpose in their life through the Clergy Project. Now they did kind of take the Clergy Project and hand it off to an independent board of directors, and they are incorporated. Dan and Linda and the others, they kind of pulled back, but they're the ones that got it started, and they were kind of involved in it until about, I would say, I think it started in 2011, and they handed it over to the board by 2013 or 14, I think. And it's been running independently ever since. And I've worked with three or four of the presidents. Drew Beckius is one of my good friends now, and he was the president. I think it was just before the one they've gotten. Lon Ostrander is now the president of the Clergy Project. But it just shows you how one of Dan Dennett's favorite quotes, and my favorite quote of his, is, if you want to find meaning in life, find something bigger than you
Yeah.
and do it.
Yeah.
And so many people think, well, I got to have God to have meaning. Daniel
Mhm.
said, no, just go find something bigger than you, and that will create meaning for you. It's such a simple formula, isn't it, Darante?
It absolutely is. It
Yeah.
absolutely is. I find I find it profound that they had that just that unction to check in on that. One of the things I try to inform my audiences of is that, contrary to popular belief, many of these pastors are not really the villain behind. They're not the villain behind the curtain that you think they are. Many of them are just as victimized by this ideology and theology as their believers are, and they do get trapped in it. And and while there are quite a few malactors out there, I'm not trying to excuse those. There are quite a few others who are well-intended individuals who stopped believing a long time ago and can't see their ways out because your whole economic structure gets pulled from under you. And then that community has been your entire network. And in this type of society, your network is everything. And then you go from having one day to not having one the next.
And I'm going to tie this into something you and I were both talking about earlier, and that's religious trauma. And what we see, and I do see it, we have a number of clergy come to us through Recover from Religion. They'll find our chat line and they'll chat in or they'll call. But they also have spouses who were traumatized or abused by that religion. They have children. I mean, there's all sorts of other people that are hurt. And so if you think about it, you're a minister 20 years, your retirement's hooked up in it, you have no other economic skills, and then one day you leave, you don't just hurt yourself, you hurt your entire family. And you may lose your family. Your spouse may divorce you, your children may disown you, which we've seen that a lot.
Yep.
So when we talk about religious trauma, and we could do this later if you want to, we got time. We see, people when they're in the church don't feel like they're being traumatized or that they experience trauma.
Yeah.
But they're supported by the social structure that kind of hides it from them.
Yep.
And the signs may be there, but of course, if you're not a psychologist, you might not notice it. But the minute you leave, that social structure falls apart, and your own mental constructs aren't sufficient. So people need, as soon as they leave religion, one of the first things we see people say is, I need community. I need to find somewhere else to join with other humans. And it's a very strong, powerful drive as humans. We're such social creatures.
Absolutely.
And that's when people experience religious trauma, is when they leave their religion. Then it all comes crashing down on them when they realize there's so many things. They realize it was all a lie, and I've wasted my life. I've hurt my family, all these things any one of which could be traumatic.
Yeah.
And then when you look at the fact that people feel, I mean, our mental health is oftentimes very closely tied to our social support network.
Absolutely.
Anyway, I can go on and on, as you know. I'll stop talking here.
No, I love that. And it reminded me of an incident that I had early on in my days in ministry. And it was around the time I was maybe 18 or 19 years old. And I was a part of this charismatic church that was sort of growing and getting some popularity. But the pastor was very controlling and domineering. And at the time, I didn't see it that way. At the time, I just saw it as we had to be submissive. We had to be obedient. We had to be faithful. And then I remember talking to another Christian who was a part of another denomination. And I was just, telling him how I was struggling to be submissive to my pastor. And he looked at me dead in the eye and he said, "Dude, that sounds like abuse." And I was like, "Oh, whoa." And that feeling at that moment was just like, how did I not see that? But even then it wasn't enough to shake me completely out of it. But now looking back on that and seeing how many other people I've seen behave that way and submit themselves to that type of behavior, it's saddening. It's saddening.
It really is, and we see so many people like that. That first year after leaving a church, first 2 years, is just brutal for many, many people.
Yeah.
And that's largely why we are here, why we exist at Recovering from Religion. We want to help make that transition easier for people. And we want them to know they are not alone. There's lots of other people who've gone through this kind of shit. And we're here to, kind of be help them help the fall be a little easier than what it's going to be.
Well, let me ask you this.
Yeah.
What are some of the most dangerous religious harms you've come across in your work, or some of the ones that we should be the most alarmed about?
Oh, I could give you a long laundry list of. Well, we see thousands of people every month in one way or the other, but I will say the three things that we see very consistently is fear of hell or Armageddon. Depends on the religion they're coming out of. Fear of abandonment, loss of social structure, loss of social support, and sex and relationships. Now, those three things show up invariably, but they oftentimes, all three are in the same person. I mean, you can imagine, especially being a former minister, all three probably did affect you.
Absolutely.
But you add any of those, all three of them together, and you got a clusterfuck. It's pretty bad for some people. And now some people are not. I mean, it's like anything. A person goes off to war. Some soldiers actually get high on it, enjoy it, find it fun, exciting, and all. Yeah. And it's not traumatic to them. The guy right next to him comes back with PTSD. So different brains respond to different stimuli differently. And so, I mean, I know a family, I've seen, I'm sure you have too, families where one person just said, when they were 16 years old, this is all bullshit, and they left. And they never had a second thought about the religious bullshit. And their sister or their brother stayed another 10 years and could never get over, but eventually left, and still is waking up at night, fear of hell. It's just the way the brain is wired, and we all have a little bit different wiring, some dramatically different wiring. Yeah. Not all brains are anywhere near alike. We're all different.
Yeah. That's for sure. That is for sure.
So I don't know if that answers your question, but those are the three things we hear the most. I'll tell you this, of course, within any of those, you can see the sexual abuse. That is obviously traumatic for both men and women. Men get a lot of sexual abuse inside the church, as we know from the Catholic scandals, but women get a lot of abuse in the Baptist church and Pentecostal churches and places like that. We're going to talk a little bit later about that with respect to one of our current things we're doing at Recovering from Religion, but we'll hold that off for our viewers.
I love it. Yeah, that was just seeing a lot of the religious harm was something that I watched throughout my entire experience, and was something I wrestled with. I know one of the things that I do share with people is at one point in my ministry tenure, I was a healing minister. So I was the one laying hands on people and things of that nature. And I started wrestling with this idea of people who didn't get healed. And as well as wrestling with the ideas that the healings that were occurring were things that I couldn't verify.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so, and there was this kind of dissonance that started kind of gnawing at me, saying, okay, now if I can't verify these healings, when I'm saying they're healed, that's not true? What if I'm giving them false hope? What if I'm pushing them to deviate from doctor's orders? And then I also thought about the people who didn't get healed at all, who are now leaving, believing that the God who they believe created them does not love them, is overlooking them, and is capable of healing someone else because I said this other person was healed, and
Yeah.
is refusing to heal them. And I start thinking like, oh my God, how damaging is that? And I
Yeah.
literally
Yeah.
stopped doing the healing ministry after that.
Well, good for you. I mean, you saw the quote the error of your ways, and you
Yes,
changed the behavior.
yes,
But you were right in this sense of what you said earlier. You were doing the best you could with the
mhm,
tools you have at the time, and
yes,
you thought these were good tools.
hmm,
Now you know better. Well, when you know better, you do better. I think Maya
yep,
Angelou said that, wasn't it? I
that's
can't remember.
right.
It was Maya Angelou
That's
said
actually
that.
my wife's favorite quote. Yes,
Okay,
indeed.
when you know better, do better.
Yep,
It's really easy to blame people or say, "Oh, I was so stupid for believing it," or "You were so stupid for
yep,
believing it." That does nobody any good, and it's not the truth. The truth
no,
is, you were doing
no,
what you thought was best at the time. So,
that's
yep,
right. And there's so much that plays into these beliefs, and that's another thing that I do try to do with my audience is kind of humanize the situation for people, is to remind people that, okay, once we realize that we're kind of primates, then a lot of this stuff really starts making sense. This is
yeah,
literally Planet of the Apes. And so we're still getting used to our own intelligence. Intelligence is still,
yeah,
our developing intelligence is still developing. This is still new for us. Morality is still new for us.
hmm,
Justice is still new for us. Equity is still. And when I say new, I mean, of course, not yesterday, but what is 300 years in the, what, 200,000 years of our development
right,
as a species?
yeah, right. Well, hell yeah. I mean, it's just 160 or 70 years ago, we were practicing some of the most heinous heinous practices ever invented by humans. Well, fortunately, we've
Yes.
reduced that. We haven't eliminated it, but we've
Nope.
reduced it
Yep.
in many ways. Yeah. So
Yep.
you refer to that. I totally agree with you. By the way, a good friend of mine, Hector Garcia, wrote a book not long ago, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, called the Alpha God. And his thesis. Have you read the book?
I'm not.
Oh, it's worth reading. After you finish reading both my books, then read his book. I
Gotcha.
always recommend it third. It's always third, not anywhere else. Yeah, it's Alpha God. His premise is that ministers are just behaving like alpha primates, and as a
Yes.
result, they get access to more females. That's why you see all these scandals. And
Yes.
so if you and he has a big thing about hats. Says, why do so many religions have big hats on 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 their prime, and why do they even call, I mean, a primate in the Catholic Church
Yes.
is, is like a bishop
Yes.
with a big hat. They
This
even
is
call it the right name.
that is hilarious.
Yeah, it's a fun book to read, and you will never look at a preacher or a priest again the same way. You'll
Oh yeah,
you'll see them
I'm
as
checking it out.
nothing but alpha males in a chimp group,
Oh wow, I
in a
love it.
primate group. Yep.
I love it. It looks like we have our first caller of the evening,
All
and
right.
so let's see if we can get them on through.
We do have a couple. I noticed we have a couple of volunteers in the chat as well. So I hope one or more of them call in sometime.
Oh, beautiful. And let's see here. and I'll just kind of keep chit-chatting until we're ready.
Yeah, whenever. I'm always ready to talk to a caller.
Right? Always. Always. I like talking to people. People are interesting.
I couldn't tell. You also like singing. We had a little concert beforehand. We got a little sample of Darante's incredible bass voice that I'm very jealous of, by the way.
Oh, wow, man. Well, honestly, I think it's probably years of cigarette smoking that has done this.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That doesn't help the voice. Well, it may
It does
lower it.
not,
Yeah.
right? It does drop it a few registers, doesn't it?
Yep.
Oh, man. Well, they're checking to see what's going on with our caller.
Oh,
Um,
having trouble.
yeah, it looks like they're having a little trouble. But I would like to know more about your book. I know you mentioned that both Deneen and Dawkins kind of inspired some of the work that's in this. Talk to us a little bit about it while we wait for our caller.
Well, in Dennett's Breaking the Spell and Dawkins' book, The Selfish Gene, they both talk about how ideas get propagated from one brain to the next brain. And it's Dawkins actually created the word meme, meme, that we hear all the time nowadays. But he created
Yes.
that word, but that he didn't imagine it being a picture on your computer. he a
Right.
meme is a unit of culture. That's all it is, a unit of culture. Algebra is a meme or a
Yeah.
memeplex. It's got many memes within it. And so you get a meme from somebody else. A meme comes from my third grade teacher's brain to my brain when I learned arithmetic. But
Wow.
a meme comes from my Sunday school teacher to my brain when I learned about the Virgin Mary, or that sort of stuff. So all I did in the God virus, this God virus up here, I can't tell which one it is.
There it is.
I took the notion of a virus, a meme as a virus, which Dawkins actually called it the virus of the mind,
Yeah.
and just said, well, okay, how does this work? Because I've studied religion my whole life. And why do some people get it and some people don't? Why do some people get the flu and other people don't? And they're in the same household,
Yeah.
So there's something going on there. And as a psychologist, I knew that some people, for example, were more susceptible to certain ideas, or their brains would respond to some things that other people, maybe in the same household, wouldn't respond to. And I found that there are personality variables that come into that. There's certain
Mhm.
types of personalities that are more susceptible to religious programming than others are. Anyway, when you read the book, it really explores how do religions propagate.
Yeah.
And if you look at it closely, they propagate a hell of a lot like the rabies propagates, or a
Wow.
lot because when a Jehovah's Witness comes and knocks on your door, they're trying to sneeze on you. They're trying to give you their cold. In this
Yeah.
case, it's the Jehovah's Witness cold. When the Mormons knock on your door, they're trying to sneeze on you. They want a religion cannot survive if it can't get from one brain to the next brain.
Yes.
The rabies cannot survive if it doesn't go from my body to your bloodstream or your nervous system. Same thing. So so you see, like the Muslim religion, because we
Yeah.
got really good documentation of how fast it spread throughout the world. It was just like a disease. And of course, there's other ways, people convert when they have a sword at their throat too.
That's
But
right.
convincing somebody, well, the sword at the throat's pretty easy. Your brain's going to get infected, and you join the army and go out and conquer more people.
Well, I mean,
Yep.
that does give you quite a different way to look at this idea of conversion. So then it's like,
Hmm.
oh, conversion is infection.
Yep.
That's this whole idea.
Yeah.
And wow, yikes. Yes. Yes.
Yep. And that's why you almost never see a person who is a Buddhist and a Lutheran at the same time, and you
Yeah.
never see a Catholic and a Muslim at the same time. The viruses have a way of keeping other viruses out. No virus wants to compete. So like viruses actually prevent other viruses from coming in. That's why we get vaccines.
Right.
Cowpox. Dr. Jenner back in the 1700s figured out that women, milkmaids, were around cows that had cowpox. Well, cowpox is so closely related that it would prevent the smallpox from infecting those women, and so they were protected for life. So all he did was just take some cowpox and start cutting people and infecting them with the cowpox, and it seemed to inoculate people against smallpox. So it shows you that one virus will help. Once it has its niche, it doesn't want somebody else coming in.
That's
Catholics,
right.
once they've infected your brain, they don't want the evangelicals coming in. So that's why the Mormons are so devoted to teaching you, if you're a Mormon, they're very devoted to teaching you how all the other churches are wrong.
Yes, yes, yes.
That way you won't get infected by a Baptist or evangelical or Catholic or Muslim, heaven forbid, a Buddhist. So yeah,
Wow.
that's the way it works.
I do this segment on my channel called Bible Study with an Ex-Pastor. And we're in the book of Genesis. We're just walking through chapter by chapter. It's not a deep theological dive. I'm just sharing the things that I thought when I was a believer, when I was a child, when I was a minister, when I was on the fringes, and what I think when I'm reading this stuff now. And so one of the recent episodes I did, I named it Division All the Way Down. Because one of the things that I realized is just that from day damn one, it's like brother against brother, is division all the way down. And then, the propaganda is that this belief unifies. But the data does not show this as a unifying belief system. It actually, what you just said just makes a lot more sense than any propaganda I've actually heard about the church. It's like, no, this is a virus that has been replicating and then fighting itself. That is wild.
Well, that was my thought too. I didn't set out to write that book. That was not my purpose. I was going to write an article and publish it somewhere.
Wow.
And I sent it off. I sent the article off to my best friend, who's a lifelong atheist. I said, "Hey, Dan," he's a psychologist too. I said, "What do you think of this?" And he came back to me with, "Wow, I never thought of that. Keep writing." Well, I hadn't planned on writing anymore. So, okay, I sat down and wrote the second chapter, the third chapter, and I sent them off. Each one of them would come back with, "Wow." And, the interesting thing, I'm a writer. I've been a writer I've written 4 books, many, many, many articles. But this, to me, writing is an exploration.
Yes.
And when you write something, you start exploring, you start putting things together, you do research, you get new information. And this whole book was a wow for me as much as for my readers. I really enjoyed writing. I've enjoyed writing all 4 of my books, but this was probably the most fun until I wrote my 4th book, which is Sex and God. I mean, how can you get more fun than sex?
We have to talk about this.
Well, I don't want to get in the way of our callers. If we got callers, did we get that? Oh, thank you, Wes, for putting that up. Dang. Okay.
Yeah, that was beautiful.
Do we have any callers? If we've got one, I don't want to take away our caller time.
Doesn't look like we have them on yet, but I know they're working on it. And let's see.
Oh, okay.
Not now. Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. So let's talk about sex then.
Yeah. Well, after I did the God virus, I got just tons of people writing, calling, wanting help, saying, and that's what led me to start recovering from religion. I wrote the God virus in 2008. I published in January 2009, and the response was just overwhelming. I had no idea it would get that kind of readership or that kind of response. It was an emotional, a psychological response, because while Dennett, Harris, Dawkins, and others like Dan Barker had written really good books, not one of them explored the psychological side of religion and how it works and why. Nobody answered the question. They all basically said religion's is stupid. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, what do you do next? And I thought, here's the next question. Why does it work? What's the mechanics of religious infection? Well, that really, that led to me starting recovering from religion, because I realized there's so many people out there and they need help, and I can't possibly help them all. I need other people to help me, and we can talk more about that later.
Yes, sir.
But in the 5th chapter of of the God Virus was where I wrote about sex and God.
Yeah.
And that one chapter got probably more emails, more responses, more comments than all the other chapters put together. And sometimes the universe does talk to you. In this
Yeah.
case, it says, you need to write another book about sex.
There it
And
is.
the fact was, I've been interested in sex my whole life since
Yeah.
since I was 12 years old, and masturbating like a 12-year-old does. And so I had a lot, and I became a psychologist. So we get a lot of training in psychology around human sexuality and stuff like that.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I decided I wanted to write a book, and I started doing the research on who else. Of course, when you're a writer, you always want to know what else has been written before you did.
Yeah.
I could find nothing out there that had ever been written about God and sex except from the religious perspective.
Yep.
I couldn't find a single book, not even a damn article on non-religious sexuality.
Wow.
And so that's what, in 2011, write the book and publish it in 2012. And basically what I'm saying in that book is, let's look at sex outside of any religion.
Yeah.
What does human sexuality look like when you take Catholicism out, or Mormonism out, or Buddhism out, or Islam out? What does it just look like? And I do a lot of cross-cultural stuff. I look at cultures that have very different sexualities, and I call them, there are sexualities. There's Catholic sexuality, there's Baptist, there's Muslim sexuality, there's Buddhist sexualities. They're all sexualities, but not one of them have any basis in real scientific fact around who we are as human beings.
Yeah.
So I wanted to get to the basics. Who are we as a biological creature, and what are our tendencies? For example, one myth that many religions try to impose on us is that we're a monogamous species, which is pretty much bullshit. We're not a monogamous species. Genetics alone shows that. You don't have to go very far. And so this notion, and if you look at Muslims, they don't claim we're a monogamous species because they allow men to have four wives. And when you look at early Mormonism, it didn't think we're a monogamous species because Brigham Young had 54 wives and Joseph Smith had 38 wives. So that's not monogamous.
No.
But Catholics think we should be monogamous. Protestants think we should be monogamous. And there are a lot of religions, but not all cultures believe in that.
Yes.
And not all cultures are patriarchally, polygamous, so that one man, many women. Some cultures, like the Muoso culture in China, also known as the Na culture, women can have as many lovers as they want, and they don't even have a word for father. Marriage is not a real thing in that culture.
Right.
So there's a lot of cultures out there that really have a different sexuality.
Yeah.
All I tried to do in the book was look at all those other cultures and ask the question, what was sexuality like before Muhammad or Jesus or Buddha or Zoroaster came along?
Yeah.
What was it like 4,000 years ago? And actually not even 4,000 years ago. If you think about it, the majority of the people on this planet did not belong to an Abrahamic religion.
Right. Yes.
1,000 years ago. They belonged to something else. Very, very different. Anyway, I could talk all day about this, DeMonte.
I like that because it did make me think about just this idea, kind of breakthrough I had a few years back. Because I know for a long time I lived my life as if something was wrong with me because I didn't have parents in my life who were, healthy, loving, and all of those things. And then a few years back, I started realizing, like, hey, dude, we're just primates. And you're not broken because your family didn't follow this social structure.
Yeah.
You are still every bit of a complete human being. Just because your family deviates from this, social construct doesn't mean that anything has actually happened to you to make you less capable of engaging the world around you. And it was it was an interesting thing to process and to think myself through, because then I had to ask myself, like, how did I allow myself to think something was wrong with me? And that's where, just realize that the harm that religion does, it goes deeper than just our religious beliefs. This controls how we actually believe about ourselves, believe about the world, because it does make it easier for us not to critically engage anything else that's going on in our lives. At least that was the case for me for a very long time.
That analysis is spot on. Really, really, it is. I'll guarantee you that. For example, the social family structure of chimpanzees is radically different than ours. The social family structure of bonobos is radically different than chimpanzees, but they look alike
Yeah.
and they're very closely related, both of them closely related to us. So there's a wide range of potential ways of being sexual as humans.
Yeah.
And we just seem to have a more flexible sexuality than chimpanzees, and a little bit more flexible maybe in some ways than bonobo apes. If you don't know who they are, look them up.
Yeah.
But we are not a monogamous species, and neither are any of our closer relatives. Gorillas are not.
Yeah.
So it's just stupid for us to have that. And it was only invented fairly recently. This whole notion of monogamy is a fairly recent
Wow.
phenomena.
I
mean,
can see that. I can see that though. Yeah. Yeah.
If you look
It
at the
looks,
Hawaii, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, it looks like we have a question in the chat,
All
and
right.
that's Ashley the Seeker wants to know, how can I heal my internalized homophobia? And I'm gonna let you take a stab at that, because I have to wrestle with that, and being okay with one's okay. That's the internalized aspect. Okay, that helps me out a little bit more. And so just so I'm understanding, and Ashley, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. You yourself identify as homosexual, and you are dealing with that phobia against yourself. Is that, if that's what I'm understanding? Is that how you're understanding it, Dr. Ray?
Let's hear what they say.
Okay. Okay. Let's see here. And we'll and Ashley, if you can help us out here, so that way we can make sure we're answering your question appropriately and considerately.
Yeah, it makes a big difference which side you're talking about in terms of
Absolutely.
internalized.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, indeed. Man, looks like we have Benny Hinn in the chat. That's neat.
Well, maybe he can heal this cold that I have here, Benny.
Oh,
Actually,
man.
I'm hoping I'm almost over the damn cold. It's like one of those 3-week colds that just won't go away.
I think every cold I get is about a 3-week cold.
Oh, I hate them. I don't usually get them for that long.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, yeah. What do we got? We got something?
I love how much people in the community actually demonstrate sincere compassion and consideration. Well, like I'd say a lot of the people in this community that I meet, regardless of what label they use, ultimately are humanist in one way or the other. And that does kind of put a emphasis on a mindfulness of others, and wanting to be clear. I think that's just another thing of just wanting to be accurate as well. Being accurate is being considerate. If I am to answer this question, I have to know exactly the context of what it comes from. And yeah, that thank you for calling that out, though. That it is beautiful, and I love that. That's something I did. That's something for years I ran from, because I thought that critical thinking was the sign of the devil. That, as in a sign of anytime I was critically thinking about something or analyzing something, there was this other voice in my head telling me that's the devil. You're questioning God. You're questioning things. And so I fought that side of myself for so long, because I thought that would lead me to be an evil person. And as you've seen, it actually leads me to be a much more kind person, a much more considerate person. Now, I'm not going to lie and say I'm nice all the time. I can be a jackass, and I can have fun being one too. But for the most part, by far and large, I try to be considerate.
Well, I haven't seen a response to our query, I guess.
I have not either.
I'm gonna go out on a limb here, and because what I'm gonna say will be irrelevant no matter which, no matter what their answer is, I think, or at least to some degree.
Yeah.
And I think it's a great metaphor for how our brains work. Imagine that you live, in a house with a lawn in the front yard, and you have a mailbox that the mailman has to get to, but he has to cross your yard to get to the mailbox. And so, over a period of time, he wears a path through your grass to the mailbox, and then he moves on. Well, one day you decide you're tired of having your grass being trampled, so you pick up the mailbox and you put it to another spot where he can get to it by walking on the sidewalk rather than walking on the grass. A new path. He's going through the sidewalk. And about 6 months later, you'll notice the grass has all grown back. Maybe not as good, but still grown back to the place he had worn his path. Well, that's the way your brain works. When you're very young, when you're an infant and you're being taught these things from your parents, long before you have reached the quote age of reason, which is really about 25 years old for humans.
That
It's
sounds
not
about right.
5 or 7 or whatever the Catholics say. You're being forced, your brain is being forced into certain paths. You're being forced into believing that there's a Satan. You're being forced into believing that if you hear voices, it must be Satan talking to you, rather than just your own brain working normally. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of paths that you're being forced
Wow.
into. You're being forced into thinking if you don't pray, God's going to condemn you. If you don't say your prayers before you go to bed, you won't wake up in the morning. I mean, all these things can be put into your young childhood brain. And
Yes,
those
sir.
are the paths of the mailman. Now, when you get to be an adult, you realize those are bad paths, and they keep leading me to panic attacks,
Yes.
or flashbacks, or bad things that keep my amygdala in my brain sensitized, so that I can't concentrate on what I want to do, and I end up doing what the church wants me to do rather than what is good for my life. Well, that's
Well,
why they trained you that way to begin with, so you do what
you
the
just
church
described
wanted.
my life.
Yeah,
That
exactly.
was the first 28 years of my life for sure. For sure.
So
Well, it
when you
looks
get
like
it,
we have Ashley back, and this time, instead of her being in the chat, she's going to be on the call with us. It looks like.
come
So
on
let's
in.
see if we can get her on.
All right.
I'm on.
Hi,
Hey,
Ashley. Welcome
Hello.
on.
Hi.
Hello.
Thank you for having me.
Of
thank you
course.
for
Of
calling
course.
in.
Yes. So
How
so
can
tell
we
us a
help
little
you?
bit more about your
So
question.
I'm sorry.
No, you can go ahead. I was just saying, tell us a little bit more about your question.
Okay, so I grew up Muslim from the ages of 9. My dad converted at 9, so we followed suit until the age of 37 when I left Islam. And Islam is not very open to LGBTQ. And I always knew that I wasn't that straight, but I always trying to be the good Muslim girl, good Muslim teen, young adult. I always try to really like men, or always gravitate towards try to be married to a man. And I was married to a man for a while, but that didn't work out. But I always knew that I was attracted to women at a very young age. I want to say at least 9 that I knew this. I didn't accept it until I was 16, but I really, really believed in Islam, to the point where I could just I always felt that I had this wonderful connection with Allah. Now that I'm out of religion, it's just the internalized homophobia that I'm dealing with. And, or maybe because I'm scared or maybe, because I'm scared to pursue a relationship with a woman. But how do I go about healing the harm that Islam or religion did to me when it comes to my own sexuality? Because I'm still working on this. I left 2 years ago, and yeah, just going through a lot, a lot that I have to heal from.
I'm gonna let Dr. Ray take the lead here. I do have some thoughts, but I do like to defer to the qualified.
Mhm.
Well, go ahead for now. Go ahead, Durante.
Okay. Well, my first thing is, one thing that I found to be really healthy is to process those fears, right? So you're at a place where you're that phobia is, I'm afraid of engaging this relationship. Finish that sentence with yourself.
Yeah.
I'm afraid of engaging these relationships. For what reason? What consequences do I think are waiting on the other side of this? What do I think is going to happen with this? And then try to categorize those fears into substantiated or unsubstantiated. Do I have evidence that this fear is something that I should actually be concerned of happening to me? Or nah, you know what I'm saying? So is this, and that this is not a perfect solution. It's just something to give it's a way to give your mind a different way to think about the fear. The fear is scary as long as you stand off from it. The further you stand away from it, the scarier it is. The closer you get to it, the more of the illusion falls away. So it's kind of like, if you remember when you were a kid, or sometimes we still do it as adults. At nighttime, you may see a tree going by the window, blowing by the window, and your mind sees a face, right? What's happening there, your mind is creating an image based off of the best data that it has. And it cannot create a better image for you until it gets better data. And that, a lot of times, that's the same way our fears work. Your fear is your mind feeding you off of the best information it has. But if you begin to give your mind more information, it can update that image. It can update that image. So instead of you seeing the boogeyman, you see, oh no, those are just trees. Those are just trees. I have nothing to be afraid of. Now, again, I am not the professional here. My specialty is sociology, and corporate stuff. But I hope I said something there that kind of gives you something to chew on a little bit.
I'm sorry.
I understand.
This is my first time talking about it. I'm 39 now. So
Yeah. It's okay. Listen, you're human. Like this thing that you're experiencing right now, it's human. Breathe through it and allow yourself to feel it. Like, and that's I think that's the recovering from religion part. That's what the thing that you're experiencing right now, that's called recovery. You're finally being able to breathe, because our truth is not just our identity, it is our experience as well. And what you're being able to do at this moment is to be honest about your experience. And that's what's creating that sense of vulnerability. And I want to make sure that we do our best at this moment to honor that moment, with you. Because it's truly powerful, truly powerful.
Are you with us, Ashley?
oh yeah, I'm still here.
Good, good. Well, I
Yeah.
just underline everything Durante said. I have two questions for you.
Uh-huh.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
You okay? Okay. First question is, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you intellectually believe homosexuality is wrong? On a scale of 1 to 10, intellectually. 1 being not wrong at all, 10 being horrible.
I know it's a 1.
Okay. On emotionally now, I'm going to change it. On a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you emotionally believe homosexuality is wrong?
Not for other people, but more so geared toward myself.
1 to 10.
I want to say like a 4 or 5.
Okay. Great. We ask this question of almost everybody that comes to us with this very issue. And that is, can you see, you gave me a 1 and a 4 or 5. So there's a disconnect between your intellectual understanding, which is what Darante was just exploring, and your emotional feeling. I don't know if you heard what I said just before you called in about the pathways, the mailman pathways.
Oh
Did you
no, I
hear
missed
that?
that.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, I'll just give you the short version. When you're a child, and even at the age you were when your father became a Muslim, your brain is being patterned, and it's being patterned within the context of that religion. And religions
Yeah.
create those neurological pathways so that later in adulthood they can control you. I like to say you can leave religion, but religion doesn't leave you.
Yeah. It's
And
still
and
taking
what
it with me.
and what you've just told us is you left the religion, but it's still got you in some way.
Yep.
And you could be
Yeah.
a Christian calling in. You would have the same feeling, even if you're a Christian calling in, or a Baptist calling in, or a
Yeah.
Buddhist, because religions have the same techniques and tools. All of them use the same tools. It's really remarkable how similar they are. But your
And
your
Yeah.
tear, your
I
tears
learned that
show
after I left Islam.
your tears show us that you're dealing with the emotional side, but you've already kind of dealt with the intellectual side.
Mhm.
Yeah, very much so.
So how do you go about healing that is the question you ask us, right? Let me
Yeah.
ask you what you've already done. What are some of the things you've done?
Mm.
Nothing.
Oh, okay. Have you
I
seen a
haven't
therapist?
I haven't done I am seeing a therapist, but I'm thinking of getting another one because my current therapist is Muslim. But
Oh
she
my
is
God.
LGBT friendly, but she is
Uh-huh.
Muslim. So I'm thinking of dropping her and getting somebody else. So
Good.
I wouldn't
Well,
be mad at it.
I'm biased. I'm very biased, by the way. I think
Yep.
any
yeah.
therapist that still holds on to supernatural beliefs is automatically going to have problems giving you the service you need. Period. I'm sorry to
I
say
agree.
that. A lot of therapists don't like me saying that.
I
That's
agree.
why that's why I started the Secular Therapy Project. And back in 2012, we
Mhm.
started the Secular Therapy, and you can find a therapist there that is not religious, guaranteed, because we make sure of that. We also make sure that they are
Okay.
secular. They won't give you crystals or tell you to go back to church, and they're licensed in
Mhm.
their area. So, and I notice you're from Kentucky. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you've probably got a dozen therapists within 50 miles of where you live, and many therapists will do
That would
call
be
Zoom
good.
calls. So I would say if you want to find a
Yeah,
good
yeah, that
therapist,
would be better for me.
pardon?
Oh, I said having Zoom therapy is better for me.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
many of our therapists will do that. If you go to seculartherapy.org and hit register as a client, it will ask you a few questions. You can even make up, you don't have to use your real name. All we need is an email address so you can communicate with the therapist.
Mhm.
And then what you do is we have 854 therapists that are all registered with us, and you can search for their specialty and for their location or whether they do long distance Zoom calls, that sort of stuff. And then you connect with them. You call them. No, I mean, don't call them. You email them through us. It's kind of like a dating site. If you've ever done Match.com or something, it's kind of like that. And then when
Yeah.
you've connected with a therapist you think can help you, and then you make the appointment and you have the Zoom call.
Okay.
Now they charge. Our service is free. Connecting people is free. The therapist still charges,
Mhm.
so you'll pay them whatever their fee is. But the reason I suggest that actually is there's some things we just it's like you don't want to do. I would be suspicious of somebody that told me they know how to do brain surgery on themselves. And
Yeah.
some things are just so difficult. You need a brain surgeon, but you don't want to be that surgeon. You could actually, it causes more
Yeah.
problems or it extends the healing process so you don't get through it as fast.
Yeah.
I'm glad you're seeing a therapist, though. So you identified an issue and you decided to move forward with that. All of our therapists are sex positive
Oh
and
yeah.
LGBTQ friendly, guaranteed.
Beautiful.
That would be wonderful. And I just went to the website and I will be signing up.
Good. While you're still on,
Awesome.
I got a crazy story to tell you, Ashley, because it parallels what you just told me. I won't use any names here, but I was it was in like 2012 at the Reason Rally in Washington D.C. and I was a speaker. I was talking about my book Sex and God, and I got up and I simply talked in my talk about accepting your sexuality. I mean, it was a whole talk on how to become more authentic in your sexuality, and I went home. I just went home, and about 6 months later, I get this phone call from a woman in a whole nother state. And she said, I just wanted to call you. I don't even know how she got my phone number. But she was in another state. She called me up out of the blue. I answered the phone. She said, I just want to call and say thank you. I said, thank you. Okay, I guess you're welcome. But what did I do? She said, you gave a talk in Washington, D.C. 6 months ago. And I took it to heart, came home, threw out my homophobia, and I'm now I'm ready to get married to my new partner, and they're still married today.
Wow.
They invited me to their wedding. Yeah, so here was somebody who had tried to be in a heterosexual relationship with a man. It never worked for her, and finally she said, after she heard my talk, she just said, "Oh, I'm lesbian. I need to." So I'm just saying it's possible, and I've actually got two real human beings. I didn't even know I did it. I guess I'm a matchmaker and didn't even know it. So
That's amazing. I see kinds of stories all the time. All the lesbian stories.
Yep.
That is beautiful.
Thanks for calling in, Ashley. I hope you get some good help there.
Oh, thank you for taking my call. Yes, you definitely have. Thank you. Thank you both of you guys all the time.
Absolutely. Have a great one, Ashley. Thank you.
That was one of the craziest phone calls I ever got, because I didn't know the woman that was calling me, and I didn't know the woman that she married. Just
that is wild.
Yeah, it was pretty wild. I didn't know I was a matchmaker when I gave my talk.
Well, before we take our next call, I do want to remind everybody that Skeptic Haven is looking for volunteers to help behind the scenes. If you'd like to be a part of our team, send us an email. Send us an email at info@skeptichaven.com. Just want to do that quick reminder in there. But that was man, I just applaud Ashley so much for showing that vulnerability with us and having that type of conversation, because so many people are struggling with that. And I think that's something that's often overlooked, not just with the sexuality aspect, but just that when people leave God or they leave religion or they stop believing in God, it's not just one thing that they're wrestling with having to stop believing in. And I think that's some of that simplicity that we once had. I know when I was a believer, the big question was, do you believe in God? And of course, on this side, you now realize that that's like a loaded question. You're never really just asking me if I believe in God. You're asking me, do I believe in this Christian God? You're asking me if I believe that Jesus was his son. And then you're asking me so there's so many layers of different beliefs that person has to wrestle with. And that's a lifetime journey for a lot of people, because it took a lifetime to get a lot of this stuff encoded, sociologically. And so it's a wrestle, because sure, you can stop believing in this particular God, but you may still believe that there's a creator somewhere, and you may still believe that creator has a hell, or you may still be wrestling with the idea that you may never see your loved ones again. There's so many layers of belief that ultimately keep people, even when they, like you said, separated themselves intellectually from this idea, emotionally, that burden and that attachment is still there. That is absolutely fascinating to me.
Well, when you look at the brain, the emotional component is not necessarily directly connected to the intellectual component, and they don't talk to each other.
Yeah.
You can intellectually, for example, what if I said there's a, if you were scared of snakes and I said, look at that snake over there, and you looked at it, but it was a toy snake.
Yeah.
Your emotional brain might still respond to it as if it was a real snake. Your intellectual side would say, "Oh, that's a funny toy snake." So these two things cannot talk to each other. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, that's right. That's good.
A friend of mine, psychologist friend of mine, asked the question: why is it so hard for people to extricate themselves from an ideology? That ideology could be a religion, it could be a cult, it could be a political movement. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Why is it so hard to get out of it, even when you know it's not good for you, or when you know it's causing you damage in some way? And what he uses a metaphor of a web, a spider web, if you will. And every piece of quote knowledge, and knowledge, I don't mean facts. I mean, I know there is a flying spaghetti monster. That is my knowledge, for example. But in knowing I'm a flying spaghetti, then I also know that he likes noodles. He has noodly appendages. He prefers meatballs. There's a heaven, and in heaven there's a beer volcano, and there's a stripper factory. I mean, all these now connect into a wide web of quote knowledge.
Yeah.
And you can say, okay, I no longer believe in meatballs. I think they should be, or I think it should not be spaghetti, but it should be SpaghettiOs or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you can change one tiny belief, but that means you got to adjust all the other beliefs.
Yes.
And that adjusting all the other beliefs, you called it layers, and I don't disagree with that. But when you adjust one belief, that sends a reverberation throughout the whole network. Yes. And you have to start. And people tell me, when I left religion, it crashed me in many ways. But then I realized so many things I had to start rethinking and adjusting. And one of the biggest is the ideology that comes with evangelical Christians.
Yeah.
Once you extricate, you realize, wow, this whole bullshit around Trump, I've been lied to.
Yeah.
Or,
yeah.
Purity culture, I've been lied to.
Yes.
And
yes.
But being lied to, realizing is one thing. Now what do I replace it with?
Yes.
And people start saying, well, I had to go get a book on evolution. I had to go get a book on psychology. I had to start relearning. And many people say, when I left religion, I felt like I was born again.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Absolutely. It's a born again experience.
Yeah. But it's got its good side, its bad side. Born again means you're naive and susceptible to other people's scams. So you got to be careful. Some people go right into the next church or the next cult or the next ideology.
I saw a lot of that for sure. That's why I often tell people, my stance isn't necessarily anti-religion, it's anti-superstition.
Yeah,
because I've seen people bounce from one religion thinking, oh, I'm free, and then just go into something just as crazy and foolish. Right. And I'm like, oh no, I think you missed the point.
Well, that hits on what we talked about a little bit earlier, that different brains are more or less susceptible. Yes. And I see people who are susceptible to ideologies and cults and religions, and they just go from one religion to the next. And they may do that their entire life and never see that they're just being seduced by the same techniques over and over again.
Yep. It looks like we do have some super chats, so I do want to give some knowledge to them before we jump into the last end. But it says, Jason says, what's up, Jason? Everyone needs to come to Baja Con so we can lean on each other as a community. Ashley, this would be wonderful for you. I agree. I know this year I may not be able to make it, but next year for sure, I have said I want to make it. I didn't even know we did stuff like this in this community, so I'm excited for it. And then let's see here. There we go.
Before you move on past that, we will have people at Recover from Religion. Will have people at BajaCon tabling. So if you go to
Yes.
BajaCon, come by and talk to we call them ambassadors, people
Yes.
who are allowed to speak for us, for Recover from Religion.
I love it. I love it. Perfect. Now I really wish I was there. And then from Fern Lovebond, just a loud way to express thanks to Ashley for sharing, and to the show for offering her and others a way to deal with their religious trauma. Thank you, Fern. Absolutely. That's a beautiful thought, and I do echo that. I think one of the most powerful things that I remember happening in church services, especially in Black church services, was testimony service. I remember watching that phenomenon quite frequently, even though a lot of them were exaggerated or just flat out lies. But anyway, the thing was hearing other people talk about what they were dealing with and how they were wrestling with struggling to overcome those things. It does do something for us when we hear that, when you hear somebody else's story. And the interesting thing is, it doesn't always even have to be a success story. You don't always have to hear how the person won. Just sometimes hearing that another person is struggling with something and trying to make a move, it just inspires us. It's like watching a good movie. It does something to you in all the right places. Let's see here. All right, and I'm just checking, making sure we didn't have anything at the chat. Remember, if you want to call in, we are here. I clicked the wrong thing. But
if you're a volunteer, if you're a volunteer for RFR, call in. We'd love to talk to you.
Yes, please call in. And that number is, if you're in the US, 984-789-4787. And from the outside, use your computer using the URL on the screen. And I do want to remind you once again, Skeptic Haven is looking for volunteers. Holler at us if you'd like to be a part of the team. That email is info@skeptichaven.com. All right, so we're kind of on the last leg of the show. Dr. Darrel, do you want to talk to us a little bit about what recovering from? Sorry, Darrell. I've changed your name.
Darrel. Yeah, that's right.
Okay, perfect.
I got two last names.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
Two first names. I'm sorry.
I was stuck in my head too.
So I'll be glad to talk a little bit about it. But in kind of a hop on the bandwagon for BajaCon,
yes,
like we will be there. We try to get to those kinds of places and let people know about Recover from Religion. We also have something we call the Fall Excursion. We're going to have around close to Charlottesville, Virginia, and we'll have up to maybe 100 people there from all over the country. Wow. And it's a 3-day, basically a retreat. We don't like the word retreat. Sounds too churchy, you know. And you'll get 3 days of hiking in the woods. I'll give a talk on as I hike through the woods. I'll tell you all about the trees and the parasites, you know, all the wonderful parasites that God made to kill us and everything else. And you'll hear some good talks from some psychologists. Dr. Travis McKee-Vorst usually gives a good talk. You'll hear talks from other people who are recovering from religion. You'll get to sit in one of our regular group meetings. We break up into small groups and let people explore and tell their stories. I mean, it's just a weekend of recovery, and it's not like a church. We don't guiltify you. You know, if you want to skip a session, you go walk in the woods. We don't give a shit. And we will never pray with you, by the way. And it's a safe space to really express very, very sex positive, very LGBTQ friendly. And we've had people tell us it was life-changing to be able to come and meet 100 other people who are going through the same thing. We also will have probably anywhere from 15 to 20 volunteers who are well trained and know how to help people. Plus a couple of therapists will be there, not to do therapy, but just to help people in case there's a crisis or something. Yeah. Absolutely. But what we really do is we have a call-in line. We have a chat line. You can chat with recoverfromreligion.org. You can hit the button and chat with us, or you can call in and chat with a real trained volunteer. We are all volunteers, though, so if nobody answers, that doesn't mean we don't care. It just means I'm working, right? Right. Or I'm asleep, because we literally take calls from the entire planet.
Wow.
And we have volunteers from Moscow, Russia, all the way around the planet to Perth, Australia. We have 451 volunteers. Actually, it's more than that, but that are trained, and they answer our phone calls. They answer our chat line. They run our groups. We've got groups all over the world. We got groups from Perth, Australia to New Zealand, all around North America, South
Wow.
America, over to England, to Lithuania. We got a group in Lithuania. We got volunteers in Lebanon. We got volunteers in Romania. We have a lot of volunteers all over the planet. So we try to take calls 24 hours a day, but we don't
Okay.
always have somebody there. And we have groups we lead, and they're both virtual on Zoom, or we have groups that we meet in a coffee shop or maybe a room in a library. We've got about 39 of those groups around the world, some of which are specialty. We have an all women's group, we have an all men's group, we have an LGBTQ group, we have a youth group. People 25 and under can attend. So
Yeah.
we try to provide service and support to anybody who's dealing with any kind of religious trauma. We're not therapists. Our volunteers are not therapists. I am, but I don't practice anymore. And those people are there to help you find help, find resources, share peer support. It's just a way to support people in their own journey. We are not here to convert or deconvert. That's not our job.
Right.
We're here to meet you where you are, and that's the main thing. But big news. Can I keep going?
Yes. Yeah, let's do
Big
it.
news is we have noticed over the years that there are scandals. I mean, think how many churches you can name probably over the last 10 years that have had enormous scandals. And I'm not just
Yes.
talking Catholic Church. The Baptists are terrible. I mean, they've got the Pentecostals, all sorts of sexual abuses going on in those churches, and have been for centuries. But with the internet and with other ways of communicating, we're starting to find that out. So we decided to do a little experiment this year, and we targeted our friends up in the Chicagoland area in Hammond, Indiana, and we put a billboard up there. I think we've got a picture of the billboard. If Wes or somebody can put it up. We put
Yeah.
that billboard up next to the First Baptist Church of Hammond, Indiana, that has had a 20-year-long scandal of the ministers grooming young girls and screwing people they shouldn't have been screwing, traumatizing all sorts of people in the name of Jesus, and covering it up, no less. And HBO even did a documentary on it that came out, I believe, in January, called Let Us Pray, spelled Prey. Let Us Pray,
Yes.
documenting how much sexual abuse had gone on with these alpha males they call preachers and ministers. So we have put that up. We're going to put another one up here at the beginning of next week. We'll have 2 billboards within a mile or 2 of that church. You can't get to that church without seeing our billboards. And we have our donors to thank, because we are a 501c3 nonprofit. Everything we do, we have no membership. We have no way of collecting money. We don't make money. If we don't get donors, we don't do it. But we've had a couple donors that put in some money, and we're happy to help us do these billboards. And if we get more money, we will do more billboards. And we're going to be strategic about where we place those billboards. We want to go where people are hurting most and where the religious trauma is palpable. And you can tell from looking at that documentary, it's insidious and it's long standing, just like it's been in the Catholic Church.
Wow. Well, it
And
does.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, it does look like we have another caller in.
Okay.
And this time is Patrick. Let's see here. Patrick, do we have you on the line?
Oh,
yes,
Sean
sir.
Powry just chatted in. Cool.
Great tonight.
Hey there, Patrick. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I was just like I'm looking at this thing from more of a purely agnostic perspective, not a adjective use of the word. Like if you say, hey, I'm an agnostic atheist or I'm an agnostic theist, you just mean you're not 100% sure of your beliefs either way concerning God. From my perspective, either atheist or theist, it's a guess. And so I'd rather not take that guess. But I like some ideas, like pantheism, the universe being God. That would be a God that we can observe with science, and it has all the evidence of science to substantiate it. Now, to say that's a God, I don't know, that would just be, if you're saying that's a God, then it would just be, I would think, to science to show what the evidence ultimately produces to determine what that means if you say that's a God.
Okay. Yep. I kind of hear you there, and I definitely get that because the idea of believing in a God, and it kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier. These layers, if you will, or this network. It's because what you say here is that the universe could be a God, and that is true if we're having a different definition of God, which is allowable to say that, okay, yeah, the universe can be God if we're mentioning a God that is not necessarily an active agent, is not necessarily a loving designer, a loving crafter of humans or anything like that. And so, yeah, I don't necessarily find that problematic. And actually, I don't find speculation about the universe problematic at all. I think that's somewhat healthy. It only becomes dangerous for me when we take that speculation and then attach additional assumptions to it, such as it loves me, it cares for me, and it cares about who I'm sleeping with or what I'm smoking or anything like that. And then once we get there, I'm like, all right, we've gone too far. But anything kind of in the area you're at, I'm like, no, that's a conversation I'm willing to entertain. At least for the most part. What do you think about that, Dr. Ray?
I pretty much agree with you. I don't really care what you wanted to call yourself. Just don't try to make me have to conform. Your religion is not an excuse to impose it on me or my sexuality or my way I want to live my life.
Yep.
Right now, we've got a pretty big, strong Christian nationalist movement, evangelical, that thinks that women should be under the laws of 1864 in Arizona, by the way. So it's crazy. Do they want to also go back to slavery? Do they also want to go back to women not having the vote? Yes, some of them actually say that. They say,
yes.
One preacher says women should never have been given the vote. Okay, that's your religion, right? But you have no right to impose that religion or that ideology, because it is an ideology. Let's be honest here. Religions all are ideologies.
Absolutely.
An ideology has a framework, and within that framework, you cannot deviate or you get in trouble. You may get your head chopped off. You may get shot. Anytime there's an ideology.
Yeah, man. That's
so let me say all religions aren't the same. Just like all atheists aren't the same. Like I could give an example, like the satanic atheist, LaVeyan satanic atheist. They don't believe in Satan. It's just, I guess, to be assholes to Christians or something. But I don't know why they created the satanic Bible, but they've created another dogma. They've got a Bible, they've got churches, they perform marriages and all kinds. I mean, that's another dogma. That seems like an oxymoron for an atheist to make that jump into another dogma. Feel like they're gone the wrong way there. From my perspective,
I can help you out a little bit there. Atheism doesn't mean anti-dogma. Atheism just means I don't believe that there's a God. So that wouldn't be oxymoronic there. And then what you're describing isn't dogma, it's ritual. Having a book doesn't mean I believe this book must govern what I do, right? Because like we have books, we have books outside of the Bible. Social clubs have books.
So the atheists have tenets in there. They got like 10 tenets.
Right. I live in a housing that we have a housing organization. We also have tenants. You know, like
Oh, like that. No, I
like no,
appreciate
like we have
look, I want
ordinances
to
that
get
we
this
agreed to
this
follow.
don't get me wrong. Look, we need separate church and state. I'm with that. I agree with the atheists on something, but this idea of no evidence of God, I don't know how you come to that conclusion. Seems like we
Well,
have a
you
lack
come to
of
that conclusion
information
with the
to
absence of
conclude that there's
evidence.
no evidence of God. What would God be? That's what I'm trying to figure out. What are we looking at evidence? If God's the universe, furthermore, that's a
But we
God that
haven't
has all the
demonstrated that
evidence. So
God
it
is the
exists as a
universe.
fact.
You'd have to demonstrate first that God was the universe. And as of now, many people who do believe in a God do not believe that that God is the universe. So what you would be doing at this moment is
Okay,
special.
well,
You'd be making a special case for
check
your
this out.
definition.
Hey, real quick, I'm sorry. Look, check this out. What if, like, panpsychism or pan-proto-psychism was correct? What if, like in the case of panpsychism, the universe itself, consciousness is a fundamental aspect of it, or in the case of pan-proto-psychism, then you have some kind of base consciousness or core, which Tesla spoke of. He said, in the universe, there exists a core for which I know exists, but I haven't penetrated the
Well,
depths of.
you've gone down a rabbit hole that nobody can prove anything about. So go for your own rabbit hole, but don't drag us down with you.
That's it.
I got better things to do with my life
Like
than
what I'm saying is, how would you falsify that? So you'd have to be able to falsify that claim to show that the universe wasn't conscious or didn't exhibit weird conscious, weird aspects and
well,
elements of the
you come
universe
up with a falsification approach, a
conscious.
scientific demonstrable approach, and we'll listen. But so far, you've just put up conjecture after
Yep.
conjecture after conjecture. You
That's
have
it.
given
I
us
mean,
nothing to go on. It's like trying to eat.
it's legitimate
It's
inquiries into philosophy.
hey, listen up, man.
You
I
know,
didn't
as
call
far
to listen to you
as
yell
I
at me.
Right.
You are giving us air. It's like
Mhm.
trying to eat air. That's all you're giving us. I got better things to do. I'd
Yep.
like to move on.
Yeah, I think Patrick, one of the
you
things
just,
that may
just
help you is that
you
when you
just
start a sentence with what, hold on, Patrick, hold on. When you start a sentence with what if, that means you don't know. And so at that moment, there's no need to stake any type of attachment to that. If you want to speculate, that is fine. But then to get upset that others won't share in your speculation, that's a little dangerous. And so you want to be careful of that. You want to be, if you want to speculate that there's a there really are a lot of possibilities. And I'm not going to be mad at you for thinking it. But when you're trying to pull other people into it just because you're thinking it, you're skipping a lot of steps there. Now, if you're genuinely interested in this, if you genuinely think this is a possibility, here's some really good advice. Get qualified to invest in your interest. Go out there, read the books, educate yourself on this stuff, get some equipment, allow yourself to be able to do the research. So then it's no longer a what if for you. Maybe you can be the person to crack that code. But to be honest, if you're just going to what if about it, and are not going to take the necessary steps to actually invest in experimenting with that idea, you're not being very honest with yourself. Does that make sense, Patrick?
Hey, hold up. I'm got a Chihuahua breakout right now. If y'all don't hear me okay. But no, I'm not assuming it's true or not true. It sounds like y'all are assuming panpsychism and pan-proto-psychism are not true. For whatever reason, it seems like you're just automatically
Well, again, you
dismissing
said what if. So if you said what if, that means you don't believe it's true either.
proto-psychism.
Do you believe it's true?
I think it could be true. I'm not saying it
Right,
is
could be.
true or
Which I
isn't
think we both acknowledge
true. I
that
think y'all are
speculation is
saying
fine.
it isn't true. I'm not making that leap of faith.
Yeah. Neither are we. But I do appreciate your call,
It
Patrick.
sounds like y'all are dissing panpsychism and panprotopsychism as not legitimate philosophy and not possible to be falsified or, evidence.
Are
Is that
you
what
doing any experiments with this? Are you doing any experiments with this, Patrick?
Can we just move on? I don't need to argue with this guy.
Yeah.
He doesn't know what the fuck he's
he
talking
don't
about.
even want to address the question. It's not worth his time.
We've already addressed
You're
it,
right.
Patrick, but we do thank you for the call, but we are going to move on, and we are close to time. And again, we've
Thank
expressed our
God for the
appreciation, but we
supernatural
are at it.
abilities of knowing what cannot be.
Yep, thank you. Thank you. That was beautiful. That's the power of technology right there. You can end it when you want to. Like, I wish I could have did that back in some days when I was stuck in church services that were going way too long.
Yep, I agree.
Oh man. I had a conversation similar to this with a friend. It was a different subject, but the same type of situation. And it was a friend of mine who wanted to educate me on this miracle worker, Dr. Sabi, and telling me about these wonderful, cures that this man has. And I was just kind of being polite about it. And I said, that's nice. And he said, well, you don't sound like you believe in it. And I was like, well, I don't, but that's just me. I just haven't seen any reason to believe this. What you mean? Don't you think they just hid all the evidence? And I'm like, oh man, like this conversation is not gonna get anywhere healthy. This is not gonna be productive.
They have practiced for decades, oftentimes going down that rabbit hole and getting mad at people for not joining them in that rabbit hole.
That's right. That's right.
I don't need that. I got more things to do with my life than argue with that kind of a person. I want to discuss two other things though before we get off of here. First of all,
sir.
we got a big fundraiser coming up on May the 4th. Be with you. May the 4th. We're gonna have a whole plethora of activists, atheists, YouTubers, podcasters, all that group and more. And we're going to be raising funds so that we can put up more billboards, so that we can do more conferences, so we can take more calls, so we can fund our meetup. Our meetup site is that's pretty expensive, by the way. Meetup is, but it's necessary for what we're doing. Anyway, I hope your people will join us at the fundraiser, and you don't have to wait till May the 4th to donate. You can donate right now if you want to, but only donate to us after you've given a donation to Skeptic Haven. Just do that first. Give them $5, then give us a lot more. I'm only half kidding. I always appreciate being on Skeptic Haven or any of your programs, and the fact that you let us talk about recovering from religion, and it gives us opportunity to help more people. You're putting me on here allows us to get more phone calls, more chats, and help more people. And the last big thing is, as of this week, we have finished incorporating recovery from religion in Australia. And by the way, we had a volunteer on here a lot long ago. Sean Powry was on here, and he is on the new board of directors for Australia Recovering from Religion. We are now a fully incorporated, fully legal entity, and can take donations for Australia. We'll be doing some kind of a fundraiser for Australia later, not right now, but anyway, that's one of the things that we've helped fund the Australians to get themselves up and running. And we're actually talking actively to a country in Africa to create a recovering from religion branch. Yeah, it's pretty cool. This is a very exciting time.
That is awesome. That is awesome. And it looks like we've got another caller and a super chat. This guy is a well-known. There's an emoji there. I don't know what it is, but I'm gonna assume it's accurate. Thank you, Michael Bell.
Michael Bell. I think Michael's a volunteer for us.
Oh, that is awesome. Yes.
I'm pretty sure he is. I mean, there's
I love Michael. I see him in the chat quite a bit. And it looks like we have another caller. This time it is David from Delaware. It looks like this will be our last call of the evening. Let's see what David wants to talk to us about.
Okay.
David, are you with us?
Thanks, guys. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir. Yep. How are you?
Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. Yeah, I think there might be a slight delay, so I'll try to adjust for that. Well, thanks for taking taking me as the last call. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
So I'll tell you why I'm reaching out. So I've been over the past 20 or so years. Well, let me start back, and I'll make it really succinct. I grew up in a fundamentalist form of Christianity. I felt when I was an early teenager, like around the age of 12 or 13, that I felt at that point was a call to ministry. I thought I found my life's purpose. I knew, what it was all about, what life was all about, had all the answers. Of course, you don't even know all the questions and still don't, but it was working for a while. So, I started to pursue that path, and things happened, life happened, it got complicated. Parents got divorced, got relocated, got sucked into a cult. And over a period of time was able to kind of get myself out of that through study and looking at, the history of Christianity and Christian doctrine and so forth. And for those reasons, I felt, that I was able to break free. But the problem was my skepticism, which has always been an issue. It didn't stop the questions. And eventually I just especially was impacted by Sam Harris and Dan Deneen and some of the others that, really helped me, I felt, put the nail in the coffin to, what was a Christian worldview. The problem is that even though intellectually I was able to come to a point where I felt like I finally was able to give myself permission to ask some questions and try to do the best I could to find answers, emotionally, I came to realize that I wasn't really able to close the door finally on like fear of hell and some, supernatural experiences that people have that, tend to be ways that they defend their faith, which has always left lingering questions in my mind. Well, maybe stepping away from the faith was a mistake, and maybe I just didn't fully, analyze the other options and maybe other traditions. And so I'm in this place today, 20 years later, where I'm thinking, maybe I should give Christianity another try. The problem is that every single sect, denomination, and even other religions, not looked at all of them, have defeaters for one another. They're mutually exclusive in certain ways that you can't really empirically determine. And so I don't know at this point. I feel kind of stuck, and I'm not sure how to move forward. And I feel like I'm going in this vicious mental cycle, trying to find answers when there's really no empirical way to do so. So I don't know how to get past this place that I'm at. And I'm wondering if you have any advice or recommendations to be able to do that. And that's my question. And I hope it wasn't too meandering or vague.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got lots of advice, but we don't have time for all of it. Let me make a recommendation, David, and then I really will put my 2 cents in. I'm sure Darante will too. I would encourage you to go to Recover from Religion, hit the chat button, and just talk. Yeah. We get the question you just asked. We get asked 50 times a day, and we got volunteers that can help you deal with some of those issues, and more importantly, they can send you to resources that you may not be aware of. We've spent the last 12 years, or I'm sorry, 15. By the way, last month it was our 15th birthday, Darante. We've been in existence for 15 years as Recovering from Religion. But anyway, awesome. David, we have this huge library of curated resources, because we get so many people with exactly the same thing. For example, fear of hell, you mentioned that. We've got a whole library just on where did hell come from? Why is it so powerful? What's the neurology behind it? And it is a neurological issue, because you just demonstrated intellectually, you've thrown it out, but emotionally, you haven't. I don't know if you heard us talking to Ashley earlier. Did you hear that conversation?
No, I started listening to the feed, and then I got distracted by a visitor, and I thought I ran out of time to call, and I got back and I had a chance to squeak it in. So
that's all right. I just didn't want to repeat myself if you'd already heard it. I told Ashley something I think is important to remember. You can leave religion, but religion doesn't leave you. And so what you get is an intellectual ability to throw out all the bullshit. But emotionally, you have 2 parts of your brain, the emotional part and the intellectual part, and they don't talk to each other sometimes. So what you're telling me is your emotional part hasn't caught up with your intellectual part. And for that, you may want to explore more of the resources we have, talk to one of our volunteers, and you may want to find a therapist. who can help you through this, that is guaranteed to be secular, very friendly to what your questions are, and already experienced with helping people with religious trauma or religious emotional issues, basically.
Yep.
Yeah.
I agree with that. Beautiful.
Thank you.
What'd you say, David?
Well, no, I appreciate your advice. You know, it feels a little bit like a cognitive dissonance that just isn't, I'm not able to resolve on my own. And that's why this is actually the first step in me reaching out for help after all this time. So I appreciate your advice. Thank you.
Identifying the problem is the first step.
Yeah.
And David, you're absolutely right. It is cognitive dissonance. It's the brain fighting itself, because you've got, multiple centers of the brain all carrying different programs, and sometimes those programs clash with each other. By the way, if you want to read an interesting book by Leon Festinger, it's a very cheap book because it's been out for so many years. Leon Festinger, a psychologist that invented the word cognitive dissonance. You might want to get a hold of this book. It's fascinating. It's called When Prophecy Fails. And the reason I recommend it is because he shows how a cult began and how it infected so many people, and how when the prophecy that the world was going to come to an end didn't happen, it only made their faith stronger, not weaker.
That's right.
And that's where he came up with the notion, cognitive dissonance. We have in our brain, David, we've got this deep and strong need to resolve the dissonance. As you've already hinted, I'm preaching to the choir, so to speak. But when people resolve the dissonance, they can resolve it in a rational direction, or they can resolve it in an irrational direction. Yep. And this cult, it still exists today. The cult does. But in that cult, they resolve many of them. When the prophecy didn't happen, they resolved the conflict in the direction of the irrational towards the community that they had built, even though it was a crazy community. Yeah. Some of them realized, oh, this is all bullshit, and they left. They resolved their cognitive dissonance by going the rational way. But what I'd like to help you do is to get through this easier, so you're not wasting time, energy, and resources on this dissonance.
Well, thank you for that. I actually purchased that. I haven't read it yet. I just got the copy, believe it or not. I found a used copy hardback. I think it's out of print. I actually was going to read that. So, yeah, great advice. Thank you.
You'll find the book fun to read, and you'll think, oh, shit, how could anybody believe this? Then you'll look back and say, oh, I used to believe that.
Yeah, that's me. This guy did. This guy.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad to know that I'm not crazy, and it sounds like other people have gone through this. So I really appreciate your advice and your feedback. I'll definitely reach out into those resources. So thank you very much. Yeah, I really appreciate it.
Biggest thing we like to tell people is you are not alone. You come to recover from religion, we will help you, because you are not alone. We've heard it from thousands of people. Have a good one, David. I hope you find the help you need, and chat in or call in to us.
Absolutely.
Have a good night.
I will do.
Thank you for your call, David. Oh man, I love that. Oh man, I had so many thoughts just about some of the things you said, because it made me kind of revisit some things. But literally, a rabbit ran across my head, and now I think it's gone. I think that thought is gone. But it was a good one. I promise you. It was gonna be good.
We have to watch this later, and you'll get it back there.
And then I'll get it back, right? But you know that you're so right. It's just that having that emotional aspect and that and dealing with the intellectual aspect. But one of the things that I do want to stress, and that's what I love about, and that's what it was, is there's safety in going to the experts when you can't trust yourself. Don't trust somebody else who is just untrustworthy as you, right? Yeah. And when I say untrustworthy, you don't trust yourself because you feel like you don't know enough, you don't have enough information. Don't go to somebody else who you feel don't have enough information either. There are people who are qualified, and I know typically when I'm in a room with anybody, if I feel like there's someone more qualified to answer that question, I typically defer, and that's not me just being humble. That's me thinking of in the best interest of the people who need that information. The final years that I pastored, I got very uncomfortable doing marriage counseling for that reason. It started like becoming clear to me, like, how serious can you be about wanting help for your marriage if you're coming to me, someone who's never been trained to do marriage counseling? Like, you're coming to me because it's free, it's cheap, like, you know.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah, that's deep. That's deep.
oh my. Well, I guess that does kind of bring us to the end, and this was a beautiful, beautiful conversation. Dr. Ray, do you have any closing words for our audience before we depart?
No, just come join us for our fundraiser and have fun with us on May the 4th. And there's actually going to be a pre-thing on Friday. I think we're going to have like a small group doing something there too. But anyway, we're looking forward to raising funds so we can put new billboards up in strategic places this coming year.
I love
Thanks
it.
for having me on.
I can't wait to see those billboards pop up all over. For those of you who are watching, please don't forget to like the video if you haven't already. Subscribe to the channel. Hit that alert notification bell so you can get notified and join all of the join the community that this channel is building. And don't forget, we are looking for volunteers to help behind the scenes. If you'd like to be a part of the team and to be a part of making this possible, making this work every week, send us an email at info@skeptichaven.com. And I think that's all I have for now. Thank you guys for hanging out with us this evening. You all have a beautiful time. And until next time, keep rising.
This is Skeptic Haven. Let's talk.